James Hartley sat at his wooden desk staring at the blank paper in front of him. The oil lamp flickered, casting shadows across the walls of his quiet ranch house. It was 1887 and he was 42 years old. 2 years had passed since his wife Margaret died, and the silence in this big house was starting to eat away at him. He picked up his pen and began to write, seeking a woman of good character for marriage. Established rancher in Montana Territory, comfortable home provided. The words felt cold and practical, but what else could he say? That he was lonely? That he missed having someone to talk to at dinner? That the ranch hands pitied him? His ranch stretched across 3,000 acres of Montana grassland. He had cattle, horses, and good land. By any measure, he was successful. But success meant nothing when you ate dinner alone every night, when the only voices you heard were rough cowboys talking about cattle and weather. The advertisement went out in newspapers across the East. James knew what to expect. Women wrote to him, mostly widows and older spinsters looking for security. Some were honest about their circumstances. Others painted prettier pictures than reality probably allowed. He read each letter carefully, trying to imagine what these women were really like. Then one letter arrived that was different from all the others. The paper was simple cream-colored stationery, nothing fancy. The handwriting was neat and careful, the kind that came from someone who took their time with words. But it was the content that made him pause. My name is Elena Novak. I'm 19 years old. James almost stopped reading right there. 19? That was barely more than a child. What could a girl that young possibly know about the kind of life he was offering? But something made him keep reading. Elena wrote about her life in Pennsylvania. Her father worked in the coal mines. Her mother had died 3 years ago. She was the oldest of 7 children, and since her mother's death, she had raised her siblings. She cooked, cleaned, managed the household money, nursed them through sicknesses, and kept the family together when her father worked long hours underground. I understand you might think I am too young, she wrote, but I have lived a lifetime in these few years. I know what it means to work hard, to sacrifice, and to stand strong when everything feels like it is falling apart. I am not looking for an easy life, Mr. Hartley. I am looking for a purposeful one. James put the letter down and rubbed his tired eyes. Something about her words struck him deep. There was no begging, no desperate pleading, just honest facts and quiet dignity. Still 19 years old. People would talk. They would say he was taking advantage of a young girl. They would call him names he did not want to think about. He meant to throw the letter away. He even crumpled it up and aimed for the fireplace. But his throw missed and the letter rolled under his desk. That night he could not sleep. Her words kept echoing in his mind. I have lived a lifetime in these few years. The next morning he retrieved the crumpled letter and smoothed it out on his desk. Against every bit of common sense screaming in his head, he wrote back. He told himself he was just being polite, just acknowledging her letter. Nothing more. But when her second letter arrived 2 weeks later, he was surprised by how eager he felt to open it. This time she wrote about her observations on life. She talked about how people judged others by what they could see on the surface, never bothering to look deeper. She asked him questions about his ranch, about Montana, about what he valued in life. Her questions were not simple ones. She asked what gave him purpose, what he thought made a good partnership, what he believed about loyalty and trust. These were not the questions of a silly young girl looking for romance. These were the questions of someone who thought deeply about life. James found himself writing longer letters in response. He told her about Margaret, about how they had built the ranch together from nothing. He admitted his loneliness but also his fear of making a mistake. He was honest about his doubts regarding her age. Elena's response was characteristically direct. Age is just a number on paper, Mr. Hartley. What matters is what we carry inside. Some people live 60 years and learn nothing. Others live 20 and understand the world better than most. Judge me by my character, not my birthday. The letters continued through autumn. Once a week, like clockwork, Elena's cream-colored envelopes arrived. James found himself looking forward to them more than he wanted to admit. She wrote about books she had read, borrowed from the library. She shared recipes her mother had taught her. She described her younger siblings with such love and patience that he could picture her caring for them. But what struck him most was her wisdom. When he wrote about a dispute with a neighboring rancher, she offered perspective that helped him see the situation differently. When he mentioned feeling stuck in his grief, she shared her own journey through losing her mother, not with advice but with understanding. By November, James made a decision that both excited and terrified him. He wrote to Elena with a proposal. Would she be willing to come to Montana? He would pay for her train ticket. If things did not work out, if either of them had doubts, he would pay for her return journey as well. No obligations, no pressure. He mailed the letter and immediately regretted it. What was he thinking? Inviting a 19-year-old girl to Montana? People would crucify him. His ranch hands would laugh. The townspeople would gossip for months, but 3 days later, Elena's response arrived. It was shorter than her usual letters, just a few lines. Yes, Mr. Hartley, I will come. I believe we might understand each other in ways that have nothing to do with age and everything to do with soul. I will arrive in Helena on December 15th. James held that letter for a long time, reading those few lines over and over. He had no idea if he was making the biggest mistake of his life, or if something extraordinary was about to begin. All he knew was that somewhere in those months of correspondence, he had started to see past the number 19 and glimpse the person behind the words, the person who signed her letters, with respect and hope. Elena might just be exactly what his lonely ranch house needed, not a replacement for Margaret, that could never happen, but perhaps a new beginning, built on understanding rather than romance, on partnership rather than passion. December 15th was 3 weeks away. James had 3 weeks to prepare his home, prepare his heart, and prepare for whatever came next. The advertisement he had written months ago seemed like a lifetime in the past. Now he waited, nervous and hopeful for the arrival of someone who might change everything. The first thing James noticed about Elena's letters was that she never tried to impress him. Most of the other women who had written to him painted themselves in the best possible light. They talked about their cooking skills, their beauty when they were younger, their ability to manage a household. Everything felt like a sales pitch. Elena was different. In her second letter, she admitted she had never baked bread for more than 8 people at a time. She confessed she knew nothing about cattle or horses. She told him straight out that Montana winters probably scared her more than she wanted to admit, having only known Pennsylvania cold. I believe in honesty from the start, she wrote. If we build something on lies or half-truths, it will collapse when reality shows up. And reality always shows up, Mr. Hartley. James appreciated that more than she could know. He had been married for 15 years before Margaret died. He knew that marriages built on fantasy crumbled fast. The real work came in the everyday moments, the ordinary struggles, the quiet partnership through hard times. So he decided to match her honesty with his own. In his next letter, he told her the truth about ranch life. He explained that Montana winters could drop to 30 below zero, that the nearest town was a 3-hour ride on horseback, that dust storms in summer could choke you, and spring blizzards could trap you in the house for days. He told her about the loneliness too. I have 12 men working this ranch, he wrote, but I have never felt more alone in my life. They are good men, hard workers, but there is no one to really talk to. No one who understands that a person can be surrounded by people and still feel completely isolated. Elena's response came faster than usual, just 5 days later. I understand that loneliness, she wrote. I am in a house full of children, my brothers and sisters who I love with all my heart. But I am raising them, not growing up with them. I am more like their mother than their sister. Sometimes I feel like I am 40 years old trapped in a 19-year-old body. No one my age understands me anymore. That letter changed something for James. He started to see that maybe age was not the important thing here. Maybe what mattered was experience, understanding, the weight that life had already placed on both their shoulders. Their letters became more frequent. Twice a week now, sometimes 3 times. They wrote about everything: philosophy, religion, politics, books, dreams, regrets. Elena had only finished 8 years of school before her mother died, but she read everything she could get her hands on. She borrowed books from the library and read by candlelight after her siblings went to bed. She asked him questions that made him think. What do you believe makes a good partnership, Mr. Hartley? Is it love or is it something deeper? My parents loved each other, but I watched my mother work herself to death trying to keep everyone happy. Is that what marriage should be? James thought about that for days before responding. He wrote about how he and Margaret had built their partnership on respect first, love second. We did not marry for passion, he admitted. We married because we both wanted the same kind of life. The love grew over time, built on shared work and shared dreams. That kind of love is quieter than what young people imagine, but it runs deeper. Elena's response showed her maturity in a way that surprised him. "I think our world sells young people a lie," she wrote. "We are told to wait for lightning strikes and heart palpitations. But I have seen that kind of passion burn out fast. My friend Betty ran off with a smooth-talking salesman last year because she felt those butterflies. He left her pregnant and penniless 6 months later. Maybe the quiet kind of love is actually the stronger kind." As autumn turned colder, their letters became more personal. James told her about Margaret's death, how she had gotten pneumonia and was gone within a week. How he blamed himself for not getting the doctor sooner, even though everyone told him it would not have mattered. Elena shared her own guilt about her mother. "I was 16 when she died," she wrote. "The last conversation we had was an argument. I was angry because I wanted to go to a dance and she said I needed to stay home and help with the children. I said terrible things, Mr. Hartley. I told her she was ruining my life. She died 2 days later, and those are the last words she heard from me." James felt his heart break reading that. He understood guilt, how it could eat at you in the quiet hours. He wrote back immediately, "We all carry regrets, Elena. But I believe the people who love us understand us better than we understand ourselves. Your mother knew you were just a frustrated young girl. She knew you loved her. Do not let one moment of anger erase 16 years of love." Her next letter came with tear stains on the paper. "Thank you," was all she wrote on the first page. Then she continued, "You have given me something I have not felt in 3 years. Peace. Just a little bit of it, but it is there." Their correspondence became a lifeline for both of them. James found himself rushing to the post office in town, something he had never done before. The postmaster started giving him knowing looks, but James did not care. These letters were the best part of his week. Elena wrote about her daily life with humor and honesty. She described her 13-year-old brother trying to court a girl by bringing her a dead frog. Her 10-year-old sister who insisted on wearing her mother's old hat everywhere, even to bed. The twins who spoke their own language that nobody else could understand. But she also wrote about the hard parts. Her father coming home from the mines so exhausted he could barely eat. The constant worry about money. The weight of responsibility that pressed on her shoulders every single day. "Sometimes I look in the mirror and do not recognize myself," she admitted. "I see my mother's tired eyes looking back at me." James wrote about his own struggles. The ranch hand who stole from him and disappeared. The harsh winter that killed 40 head of cattle. The nightmares where he watched Margaret die over and over, unable to save her. "People think ranch owners have it easy," he wrote. "They see the land and the cattle and think we just sit back and watch money roll in. They do not see the constant worry, the gambling on weather and markets, the weight of being responsible for the men who depend on you for their wages." By the time James sent the invitation for Elena to visit, he felt like he knew her soul. Not perfectly, not completely, but enough to believe they might build something real together, something based on understanding rather than illusion. Her acceptance letter sat on his desk for days. He would pick it up and read it, then set it down and wonder if he was making a terrible mistake. 19 years old. What would people say? What would they think? But then he would remember her words, her wisdom, her honest assessment of life's hardships and joys. And he would think maybe, just maybe, the number did not matter as much as the person behind it. 3 weeks until she arrived. 3 weeks to prepare for a meeting that felt both terrifying and inevitable. James had no idea what would happen when they finally stood face to face. But he knew one thing for certain. Elena Novak was not just some young girl looking for an easy life. She was someone who had already lived through more than most people twice her age. And that was worth taking a chance on. The train station in Helena was crowded that December afternoon. James stood on the platform, his heart pounding harder than it had in years. He wore his best suit, the one he saved for funerals and important meetings. His hands kept smoothing down his jacket, a nervous habit he could not control. Other ranchers waited nearby, some for supplies, others for ranch hands arriving from back east. Tom Peterson stood a few feet away waiting for barbed wire he had ordered. When he saw James all dressed up, he smirked. "Heard you got yourself a mail-order bride coming in, Hartley," Tom said loud enough for others to hear. "That true?" James nodded stiffly, not taking his eyes off the train tracks. "How old is she?" another rancher called out. Heard she's barely out of school. 19, James said quietly. The laughter that followed made his face burn. 19? Boy, you robbing cradles now? What's wrong? Could not find a woman your own age? James clenched his fists but said nothing. He had expected this. People always judged what they did not understand. He kept his eyes on the horizon, watching for the train's smoke. When the whistle finally blew, his stomach dropped. The train pulled into the station, brakes squealing, steam hissing from the engine. Passengers began stepping off. Businessmen in suits, families with crying children. A group of cowboys heading to ranches for winter work. Then he saw her. Elena was smaller than he had imagined. Much smaller. She stood maybe 5 feet 2 inches, thin in a way that suggested she did not always get enough to eat. Her coat was old and patched, clearly a hand-me-down, probably her mother's. It hung loose on her small frame. Her dark hair was pulled back simply, and she carried a single worn bag. But it was her face that made James's heart sink. She looked even younger than 19. With those large eyes and delicate features, she could have passed for 16, maybe even 15. James felt the stares of the other ranchers burning into his back. He heard their whispered comments, their barely contained laughter. That's her? That little girl? Good Lord, Hartley, she looks like she should be playing with dolls. This is going to be entertaining. Give her 1 week before she runs screaming back east. James wanted to defend her, defend himself, but what could he say? Elena did look impossibly young standing there on the platform, dwarfed by the adults around her. Then Elena spotted him. Their eyes met across the crowded platform and something shifted. She walked toward him with steady steps, her chin up, her gaze direct. When she reached him, she set down her bag and extended her hand like she was meeting a business partner, not a potential husband. Mr. Hartley, she said. Her voice was soft but clear. Thank you for meeting me. Her hand was small in his, but her grip was firm. Up close, James could see the details the distance had hidden. Yes, her face was young, but her eyes were not. They held something he recognized from his own mirror. Experience, loss, the kind of knowing that came from hard living. Miss Novak, he managed. Welcome to Montana. Behind them, the ranchers were still snickering. Elena heard them too. He could tell by the slight stiffening of her shoulders. But she did not turn around, did not acknowledge them. She just picked up her bag and looked at him expectantly. Your ranch is far from here, she asked. 3 days' journey, James said. We will stay tonight at the boarding house, then leave at first light. Elena nodded. That sounds sensible. As they walked through town toward the boarding house, James was hyper-aware of every stare, every whispered comment. Helena was not a big city and news traveled fast. By tomorrow, everyone would know that James Hartley had brought in a child bride. The boarding house owner, Mrs. Patterson, looked Elena up and down with obvious disapproval. Separate rooms, I assume? She said, her tone making it clear what she thought of the situation. Of course, James said firmly. 2 rooms, please. That night, James lay awake in his room, wondering if he had made a terrible mistake. Elena looked so young. Too young. What had he been thinking? Those letters had made him forget the reality of her age. Now, seeing her in person, all his doubts came flooding back. The next morning at breakfast, Elena appeared in the same old coat, her bag repacked and ready. She ate her porridge quietly, not complaining about the lumpy texture or weak coffee. When James asked if she had slept well, she just nodded. I am ready to leave whenever you are, Mr. Hartley, she said. The journey to the ranch took them through rough country. They traveled by wagon, with James driving and Elena sitting beside him. The December cold was bitter, and Elena pulled her thin coat tighter around herself. James noticed but said nothing. He had brought extra blankets, which he offered her after the first hour. Thank you, she said, wrapping one around her shoulders. They rode in silence for a long time. James did not know what to say. All those letters, all those deep conversations, and now he found himself tongue-tied. The young woman beside him seemed like a stranger. It was Elena who finally broke the silence. You are having doubts, she said. It was not a question. James opened his mouth to deny it, then stopped. She had valued honesty in their letters. He owed her the same now. Yes, he admitted. You look younger than I expected. People are going to talk. They already are. Elena was quiet for a moment, watching the landscape roll past. I know I look young, she finally said. I have always looked younger than my age. When my mother died, people kept telling my father he needed to find someone to care for us children. They looked right at me, the oldest, and did not even consider I could do it. They saw a child. She turned to look at him then, and James saw steel in those young eyes. But I did do it, Mr. Hartley. For 3 years I have kept that family together. I have made every meal, nursed every fever, settled every fight, and stretched every penny until it screamed. Not because I looked old enough to do it, but because it needed doing. James felt something shift in his chest. You are right, he said slowly. I am judging you by what I see instead of what I know. That is human nature, Elena said without bitterness. People judge by appearances first. I cannot change how I look, but I can show you who I am through my actions. That is all I ask, a chance to prove myself. Fair enough, James said. The rest of that day's journey passed more comfortably. They talked about simple things. The weather, the landscape, the wildlife. Elena asked questions about Montana, about the ranch, about what would be expected of her. Her questions were practical, not romantic. She wanted to know how many men she would be cooking for, what supplies were available, how the household was currently managed. By the time they stopped for the night at a way station, James felt some of his doubts easing. Yes, Elena looked young, but the person talking to him, asking intelligent questions and making practical observations, was no child. The second and third days of travel tested them both. A winter storm rolled in, bringing snow and wind that cut through their layers of clothing. The wagon wheels got stuck twice in snowdrifts, and James had to dig them out while Elena held the horses steady. She did not complain once, even though he could see her shivering. When they finally arrived at the ranch on the evening of the third day, Elena sat up straighter, taking in the sight. The ranch house was large, built of logs with a stone chimney. Outbuildings dotted the property. In the distance, cattle moved across the snowy fields. It is beautiful, Elena said softly. The ranch hands came out to help with the wagon, and James saw their reactions to Elena: surprise, skepticism, and in some cases barely hidden amusement. A few of the younger ones elbowed each other and whispered, but Elena held her head high as James introduced her. She looked each man in the eye and greeted them politely. If she noticed their doubt, she did not show it. That night, James showed Elena to her room. It was the spare bedroom, clean and simple. He had made sure it was ready with fresh linens and a good fire in the small stove. This is your space, he told her. No one will bother you here. Tomorrow we can discuss arrangements and expectations, but tonight, just rest. Elena set down her bag and turned to him. Mr. Hartley, I know today was difficult. I know I am not what you expected, but I meant what I said in my letters. Judge me by my character, not my appearance. Give me time to show you who I really am. James looked at this small, young-looking woman standing in the doorway of his spare bedroom, and he made a decision. She deserved a fair chance. She had traveled 3,000 miles based on letters and faith. The least he could do was keep an open mind. All right, Miss Novak, he said. We will take this one day at a time. No promises, no pressure. Just see how things go. Elena smiled for the first time since arriving, and James noticed it transformed her face. That is all I ask, she said. One day at a time. Elena's first morning at the ranch started before dawn. James woke to the smell of coffee brewing and found her already in the kitchen, still wearing her old coat over her dress for warmth. She had found the supplies and was studying the massive cast-iron stove with a determined look on her face. Good morning, she said when she noticed him. I hope you do not mind. I could not sleep, so I thought I would get started. The kitchen was the largest room in the house, built to feed a crew. The stove could hold 8 pots at once. The table sat 12 men comfortably. Everything was bigger than what Elena was used to, but she did not let that show on her face. The men will be in for breakfast at 6, James told her. Usually it is just biscuits, bacon, and coffee. Nothing fancy. Elena nodded, rolling up her sleeves. How much bacon for 12 men? 2 pounds usually does it. He watched her calculate in her head, then start working. Her movements were efficient, practiced. She had clearly spent years cooking for a crowd, even if not this big of one. But James noticed her hand shaking slightly as she mixed the biscuit dough. Nerves, probably. First day on the job. At 6 o'clock sharp, the ranch hands tramped in, bringing cold air and the smell of the barn with them. They stopped when they saw Elena at the stove, taking in her small frame and young face. A few exchanged knowing looks till Chuck, the oldest hand at 50-something, spoke up. "Morning, miss. You need any help with that?" It was said kindly, but James heard the doubt underneath. They all thought she could not handle it. "I am fine, thank you," Elena said, not turning from the stove. "Please sit down. Breakfast will be ready in a moment." The men sat, but the conversation was muted. Usually breakfast was loud, full of jokes and complaints about the cold. Today everyone watched Elena, waiting to see what would happen. She served the food without fanfare. Biscuits, bacon, fried eggs, and coffee. Nothing burned, nothing undercooked. The portions were generous. She moved around the table efficiently, making sure everyone had what they needed, then stepped back. The men ate in continued silence. James could see them processing. The food was good. Maybe not amazing, but solid and filling. No complaints there. But their faces still held skepticism. It was young Tommy, barely 20 years old, who voiced what they were all thinking. "No offense, miss, but you look mighty young to be running a household this size. You sure you can handle it?" Elena met his eyes calmly. "I have been running a household since I was 16. My circumstances were different, but the work was the same. Cooking, cleaning, managing supplies, nursing the sick. I will not lie and say I know everything about ranch life. I do not, but I learn fast and I work hard. That is all I can promise." Tommy looked a bit embarrassed, but he nodded. "Fair enough, miss." After breakfast, the men filed out to start their work. James heard them talking outside, their voices carrying through the window. "She can cook, I will give her that. But can she keep up? Winter's just starting. Wait until we are snowed in for days and everyone is going crazy. I give her 2 weeks before she is crying to go home. I will bet you $5 she does not make it to spring." Elena heard them too. James saw her shoulders stiffen, but she just started clearing the table without comment. The days fell into a routine. Elena woke before everyone, made breakfast, cleaned up, started preparing lunch. In between, she learned the layout of the house, figured out the storage system, and took inventory of supplies. She worked from dawn until late into the night, and James never once heard her complain. But he watched the ranch hands watching her. They were waiting for her to fail, to prove their assumptions right. Every task was a test in their eyes. When the laundry needed doing, she hauled water and heated it on the stove, washing 12 men's worth of clothes and linens. Her hands turned red and raw from the harsh soap and cold water, but the clothes came clean. When supplies ran low, she made a list for James's trip to town, organized by priority and cost. She had clearly been managing a household budget for years. When the bread ran out faster than expected, she started baking twice a day instead of once, getting up even earlier to have fresh loaves ready. The ranch hands stopped making bets about when she would leave. But they still did not fully accept her. She was too young, too small, too much of an outsider. They were polite but distant, treating her like a temporary fixture rather than a permanent part of the ranch. Then, 3 weeks after her arrival, ranch hand Pete collapsed during dinner. One moment he was eating. The next he was on the floor, burning with fever and coughing so hard his whole body shook. James and Chuck carried him to his bunk in the workers' quarters, but everyone knew what it meant. Pneumonia. In Montana winter, it was often a death sentence. "We need to get the doctor," Chuck said. "But the nearest one is 2 days' ride in this weather." James nodded grimly. "I will leave first thing in the morning." "He might not have 2 days," Chuck said quietly. Elena appeared in the doorway of the bunkhouse carrying blankets and a basin of water. "Let me see him," she said. The men looked at each other uncertainly. Pete was a big man, rough and tough. What could this slip of a girl do? But Elena did not wait for permission. She moved to Pete's bedside and felt his forehead, then his pulse. She listened to his breathing, leaning close to hear the rattle in his chest. "It is pneumonia," she confirmed. "But it is early still. We have a chance if we act fast." "You know about nursing?" James asked. "My mother died of pneumonia," Elena said simply. "I could not save her. But I learned everything the doctor did, everything he said we should have done sooner. I have nursed my siblings through it 3 times since then. All of them lived." She started giving orders then, and something in her voice made the men listen. "I need more blankets, but not too many. We have to bring his fever down without letting him get chilled. I need clean cloths and cool water. I need whiskey if you have it and honey. I need someone to make a strong tea from pine needles. It helps open the lungs." For the next 4 days, Elena barely slept. She sat by Pete's bedside, monitoring his fever, forcing liquids down his throat, keeping his chest warm with poultices she made from mustard and flour. She propped him up to help him breathe, cleaned him when he was too weak to move, and talked to him constantly to keep him conscious. The ranch hands took turns checking on Pete, and they all saw Elena there hour after hour, day and night. Her hair came loose from its pins. Her dress got stained with medicine and sweat. Dark circles appeared under her eyes, but she never left his side for more than a few minutes. On the fourth night, Pete's fever broke. Elena sat back in her chair, exhausted, and allowed herself a small smile. He would live. Chuck found her there the next morning, asleep in the chair beside Pete's bed, her hand still on his wrist, checking his pulse even in sleep. He went back to the main house where the other men were having breakfast. "Pete is going to make it," he announced. "Thanks to that girl." The room went quiet. Then Tommy spoke up. "She is not a girl. She is tougher than most men I know." There were nods and murmurs of agreement around the table. Something had shifted. They had seen Elena at her best, had watched her fight for Pete's life with everything she had. Age did not matter when you watched someone save a man's life through sheer determination and knowledge. When Elena finally emerged from the bunkhouse later that morning, stumbling with exhaustion, she found breakfast waiting for her. The men had made it themselves, a clumsy effort but made with good intentions. "Sit down, miss," Chuck said gently. "You need to eat and rest." For the first time since arriving, Elena let tears show in her eyes. But they were tears of relief and gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered. James watched from the doorway as his ranch hands, these tough cowboys who had doubted her from day one, now fussed over her like protective brothers. One brought her coffee. Another pushed the best pieces of bacon onto her plate. Tommy offered her his own chair because it was more comfortable. That afternoon, when Elena finally made it to her room to sleep, James heard the men talking in the kitchen. "I was wrong about her," Pete's friend Danny said. "Dead wrong. Age does not mean nothing when it comes to character." "She is stronger than she looks," Chuck agreed. "Reminds me of my own mother. Small woman, but tough as nails when it counted." "Boss made a good choice," Tommy added. "Even if we were too stupid to see it at first." James smiled to himself. Elena had passed their test, though it was not a test she had asked for or should have had to take. She had proven herself through actions just like she said she would. Winter was far from over. There would be more challenges, more storms, more hardships to face. But now Elena faced them with the respect and support of the ranch hands. She had earned her place here, not through her age or appearance, but through her courage, her knowledge, and her unwavering commitment to doing what needed to be done. As for James himself, he was beginning to see what those letters had shown him all along. Elena Novak might look like a child, but she had the heart of a warrior and the wisdom of someone who had already fought and survived life's hardest battles. And that was worth more than any number could measure. Winter deepened its grip on the Montana ranch as January gave way to February. The days were short, the nights brutally cold, and the wind never seemed to stop howling. Elena had settled into the rhythm of ranch life, earning the respect of the hands through her hard work and quiet competence. But James still kept his distance, polite but formal, always calling her Miss Novak, always maintaining a careful wall between them. Elena felt it, that distance. At night, alone in her room, she wondered if she had made a mistake coming here. Yes, the ranch hands had accepted her. Yes, she was doing good work. But James, the man whose letters had touched her soul, remained an enigma. The deep conversations they had shared through writing seemed impossible to recreate face to face. Then the spring blizzard hit. It came without much warning, as spring storms sometimes did. The morning started mild, almost pleasant by Montana standards. By noon, the sky had darkened to an ominous gray. By 2 o'clock, snow was falling so thick you could not see 10 feet in front of you. James ordered everyone inside. The cattle would have to fend for themselves. In weather like this, a man could get lost walking from the house to the barn and freeze to death before finding his way back. For 5 days, they were trapped. 14 people in one house with nothing to do but wait out the storm. The ranch hands played cards, told stories, mended equipment. Elena cooked and cleaned, keeping busy because sitting still made her anxious. James retreated to his study, a small room off the main living area where he kept his books and papers. Elena saw him through the half-open door sometimes, sitting at his desk, staring at something in his hands. But he always closed the door when he noticed her looking. On the third day of the storm, cabin fever started setting in. The men got irritable, snapping at each other over nothing. Tempers flared over card games. The walls felt like they were closing in. Elena tried to keep spirits up by baking extra desserts, organizing a storytelling evening, suggesting projects to pass the time. But even her efforts could not completely dispel the tension that came from too many people trapped in too small a space for too long. On the fourth night, she could not sleep. The wind howled like a living thing, and the house creaked and groaned under the assault. She got up, wrapped a shawl around her shoulders, and went to the kitchen to make tea. The house was dark and quiet. The ranch hands were all asleep in their quarters. She lit a single lamp and put water on to boil, standing by the warm stove and watching shadows dance on the walls. A sound made her turn. James stood in the doorway of his study, still fully dressed despite the late hour. In his hands was a small photograph in a silver frame. "Could not sleep either," he asked quietly. "The wind is loud," Elena said, though that was not the real reason. James nodded and moved into the kitchen, setting the photograph on the table. Elena could see it now. A woman, pretty and smiling, wearing what looked like a wedding dress. Margaret, his late wife. "I am sorry," Elena said. "I did not mean to intrude on your grief." "You are not intruding," James said, sitting heavily in one of the chairs. He looked tired, older than his 42 years. "I come out here some nights when I cannot stop thinking. Usually nobody else is awake." Elena poured 2 cups of tea and sat across from him. The photograph lay between them, Margaret's smile forever frozen in that captured moment. "She was beautiful," Elena said softly. "She was," James agreed. "Beautiful, strong, smart. We built this ranch together from nothing. When she died, I felt like half of me died too." Elena understood that grief. She had felt it when her mother died. "How long has it been?" 2 years, 3 months, and 15 days, James said. Then he laughed bitterly. "I still count the days. Pathetic, is it not?" "No," Elena said firmly. "It means you loved her deeply. There is nothing pathetic about that." James looked at her then. Really looked at her, maybe for the first time since she arrived. "You understand," he said. It was not a question. "I do," Elena said. "My mother died 3 years ago. 3 years, 4 months, and 8 days. I count 2. They sat in silence for a moment, 2 people bound by grief they rarely spoke about. The wind continued its assault on the house, but inside, by the warm stove with tea steaming between them, something shifted. "I am sorry," James said suddenly, "for how I have been treating you, keeping you at arm's length, calling you Miss Novak like we are strangers." "We are strangers," Elena pointed out gently. "Letters can only tell you so much about a person." "But we do not have to stay strangers," James said. "And I have been making that impossible by hiding in my study and avoiding real conversation." Elena took a sip of her tea, choosing her words carefully. "You see a girl when you look at me," she said. "I know you do. I see it in your eyes, the way you hesitate before speaking to me, like you're not sure how to talk to someone my age. You see 19 years old and you think of everything I have not experienced, everything I have not lived through." James started to protest, but Elena held up her hand. "Let me finish," she said. "I understand why. I look young. I am young by the calendar. But hardship does not wait for birthdays, Mr. Hartley. It does not care if you are ready or not. It just comes, and you either survive it or you do not." She leaned forward, her eyes intense in the lamplight. "When my mother got sick, I was 16 years old. 16. I should have been thinking about dances and boys and what dress to wear. Instead, I was watching my mother slowly suffocate, listening to her beg for air that would not come. I held her hand when she died. Do you know what that does to a person? How it ages your soul, even if your face stays young." James felt something crack in his chest. He had been so focused on her age, her appearance, that he had forgotten what she had told him in those letters. The loss she had carried, the responsibility she had shouldered, the weight she had borne. After she died, Elena continued, her voice steady but soft. "I had 7 brothers and sisters looking at me like I had all the answers. My father worked 16-hour days in the mines just to keep food on the table. Everything else fell to me. Every meal, every scraped knee, every nightmare, every fight, every decision. I was 16, 17, 18 years old, and I was raising 6 children." She paused, wrapping her hands around her teacup. "I had friends my age, Other girls who talked about courting and parties and all the normal things young people think about. But I could not relate to them anymore. They worried about ribbon colors. I worried about stretching a pound of beans to feed 8 people for 3 days. They gossiped about who was dancing with who. I tried to figure out how to teach a 10-year-old boy to read because he was falling behind in school. I became an outsider in my own age group, she said quietly. Too old in experience, too young in years. Not fitting anywhere. When I wrote to you, it was the first time in 3 years that someone treated me like an adult, not as a girl playing house, but as a person with real thoughts, real depth, real understanding of how hard life can be. James stared at the photograph of Margaret, then back at Elena. He saw her differently now, sitting across from him in the lamplight. Yes, her face was young, but her eyes held depths he had been refusing to see. You're right, he admitted. I have been judging you by what I see instead of what I know. And what I know from your letters and from watching you these past months is that you have more wisdom than most people twice your age. I am not saying I know everything, Elena clarified. I do not. There is so much I have not experienced. So much I still need to learn. But the idea that wisdom only comes with years, that is not true. Wisdom comes from paying attention, from suffering, from learning from your mistakes and the mistakes of others. Age can bring wisdom, yes, but it does not guarantee it. I have known 60-year-old fools, James said, almost to himself. Exactly, Elena said, and I have known children who understood life better than their parents. Numbers on a calendar do not define who we are inside. The wind rattled the windows and both of them glanced up, then back at each other. James felt something he had not felt in 2 years. Connection. Real, deep connection with another human being. I am scared, he admitted, of letting someone in again, of caring and potentially losing them. When Margaret died, I thought I would die too. The pain was so intense I could barely breathe. I swore I would never put myself through that again. But you wrote that advertisement anyway, Elena pointed out. Because loneliness is its own kind of death, James said. Slower, but just as painful. I know, Elena whispered. In a house full of people, I was so lonely I thought I might disappear. Nobody saw me, the real me. They just saw the cook, the caretaker, the substitute mother. I stopped being Elena and became just a function. They sat in silence again, but this time it was comfortable. Understanding flowed between them without words. Can we start over? James asked finally. Not as employer and employee or even as husband and wife in name only, but as 2 people who have both been through hard things and might understand each other. Elena smiled, the first real smile he had seen from her in weeks. I would like that, Mr. Hartley. James, he corrected. Please call me James. All right, Elena said. And you can call me Elena. Elena, he repeated, testing the name. It felt right. They talked until dawn, sharing stories they had not told anyone else. James spoke about his fears, his regrets. Spring arrived late that year, but when it finally came, it transformed everything. The snow melted, revealing brown grass that would soon turn green. The cattle emerged from their winter shelters thin but alive, and the relationship between James and Elena continued to evolve in ways neither had expected. Their late-night conversation during the blizzard had broken down the wall between them. James no longer retreated to his study after dinner. Instead, he and Elena would sit together by the fire, talking about everything and nothing. The ranch hands noticed the change and approved with knowing smiles. But it was what happened during the day that surprised everyone most, including James himself. It started with the account books. James had always managed the ranch finances alone, considering it his responsibility and his burden. But one morning he found Elena studying the ledgers he had left on the kitchen table. I am sorry, she said when she noticed him watching. I was not snooping. You left them out, and I was curious about how a ranch this size operates financially. James should have been annoyed. Those books contained private information, sensitive details about profits and losses. But instead he found himself asking, "What do you think?" Elena hesitated. "Do you really want to know?" "I might be completely wrong. I only managed a household budget, not a business." "I want to know," James said, sitting down across from her. Elena ran her finger down a column of numbers. "You are spending too much on feed from Miller's Supply in town. I noticed from the receipts that you buy the same amount every month, regardless of season. But in summer, the cattle graze. They do not need as much supplemental feed. You could cut that expense by at least 30% from May through September. James blinked. She was right. He had always just ordered the same amount, never thinking to adjust based on seasonal needs. What else? He asked, genuinely curious now. Your contract with the beef buyer in Helena, Elena said carefully. You are locked into a price that was fair 2 years ago, but beef prices have gone up. You should renegotiate before the next delivery. James pulled the ledger closer and studied the numbers he had looked at 100 times but never really questioned. Elena was right about that too. He had been so busy with the daily operations that he had not paid attention to market changes. You have a good eye for this, he said. I had to, Elena explained. When you are feeding 8 people on a mine worker's salary, you learn to notice every penny. You look for patterns, ways to save money, opportunities to get more value. It becomes second nature. From that day forward, James started including Elena in business discussions. At first, he just asked her opinion on small things, but her insights were consistently valuable. She noticed waste he had overlooked. She suggested efficiencies he had not considered. She approached problems from different angles that sometimes revealed solutions he had missed. The ranch hands were skeptical at first. When James started asking Elena's opinion during their morning planning meetings, a few raised eyebrows when James said, Elena thinks we should rotate the southern pasture differently this year. Let me explain her reasoning. But Chuck, who had worked ranches for 30 years, listened to the plan and slowly nodded. That actually makes sense. Would give the grass more recovery time and prevent overgrazing. Smart thinking, Elena. Elena had been nervous about speaking up in front of the men, but their acceptance encouraged her. She started offering suggestions more freely, always respectful of their experience but not afraid to share her perspective. I am not saying I know more than you about cattle, she would say, but sometimes a fresh set of eyes sees things differently. The men appreciated that humility. She never acted like she had all the answers, but she also did not hold back good ideas out of false modesty. It was a balance that earned their respect. Then came the day that changed everything. It was mid-May and James had ridden into town for supplies. Elena was alone at the ranch house preparing lunch when she heard shouting from outside. She ran to the window and saw one of the ranch hands, Danny, racing toward the house on horseback. Rustlers, he yelled. They are cutting out a dozen head from the north pasture. Elena's heart jumped. Cattle rustlers were every rancher's nightmare. The other hands were out on the range, too far away to help quickly. Danny had come to the house hoping James was there. He went to town, Elena called out. He will not be back until evening, Danny cursed. By then, those cattle will be gone. That is $1,000 on the hoof. Elena made a split-second decision. She ran to the study where James kept his rifle, loaded it with shaking hands, and grabbed the shotgun from above the door. Show me where, she said, running outside. Danny stared at her. Miss Elena, this is dangerous. These men are armed. So am I, Elena said, her voice steadier than her hands. We are not letting them steal from this ranch. Now show me where. They rode hard toward the north pasture. Elena had learned to ride over the winter, though she was far from expert. She held on tight and prayed she would not fall off as the horse galloped across uneven ground. When they reached the rise overlooking the pasture, she saw them, 2 men on horseback, cutting cattle from the herd and driving them toward the property line, bold as day, not even trying to hide what they were doing. Fire a warning shot, Elena told Danny. Let them know they have been seen. Danny fired his rifle into the air. The 2 rustlers looked up startled. One of them laughed when he saw Elena. A girl and 1 cowboy? He shouted. That is the best you got? Elena raised the shotgun, pointing it steadily at the man. Her heart was pounding so hard she thought it might burst out of her chest, but her hands did not shake. Years of holding crying babies, steadying fevers, keeping calm in crisis, all of it came together in this moment. Leave the cattle and ride off, she called out, her voice carrying across the distance. This is your only warning. The rustler sneered. Or what, you are going to shoot me? Little girl like you probably does not even know how to use that thing. I know exactly how to use it, Elena said. My father taught all his children to shoot. He said you never know when you might need to protect yourself. I did not want to learn. I thought it was violent and unnecessary. But he made me practice every Sunday after church until I could hit a target at 50 yards. She adjusted her aim slightly. You are much closer than 50 yards. And this shotgun has a wide spread. Even if I miss your heart, I will hit something you care about. So I am going to count to 3. 1. The rustler's smile faltered. 2. He looked at his partner, who had gone pale. They were probably used to intimidating people, used to ranchers backing down or running for help. They were not used to a small woman with a shotgun who looked like she meant business. 3, Elena said and started to squeeze the trigger. All right, the rustler shouted, holding up his hands. We are going. They turned their horses and rode off fast, leaving the cattle behind. Danny and Elena watched them disappear over the horizon before either of them moved. Then Elena lowered the shotgun, and her hand started shaking so badly she nearly dropped it. Danny caught it and looked at her with something like awe in his eyes. Miss Elena, that was the bravest thing I have ever seen, he said. Or the craziest. Maybe both. Elena sat down right there on the grass, her legs suddenly unable to hold her. I was terrified, she admitted. I thought I might throw up. Could not tell, Danny said. You looked like you have been facing down rustlers your whole life. By the time James got back that evening, the story had spread to every ranch hand. They gathered around as Danny told it again, embellishing only slightly. She rode out there like she was going to war, Danny said. Faced down 2 armed men without even blinking. Told them exactly how far she could shoot and what she would hit. They believed her too. Rode off like their tails were on fire. James looked at Elena, who was sitting quietly at the table, embarrassed by all the attention. Is this true? He asked. I did what needed doing, Elena said simply. They were stealing from you, from us. I could not just let them. James sat down next to her. You could have been killed. But I was not, Elena pointed out. And we still have those cattle. Chuck, who had been listening from the doorway, spoke up. Boss, if you do not mind me saying, you have got yourself a partner here. Not just a cook or a housekeeper. A real partner. Most women would have hidden in the house and waited for the men to handle it. She rode into danger to protect what is yours. What is ours, Elena corrected quietly. This ranch might be in James's name, but I am part of it now. What hurts this place hurts me. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, James found Elena sitting on the porch looking at the stars. He sat beside her in silence for a moment. You scared me today, he finally said. I scared myself, Elena admitted. But you did it anyway, James said. That is courage. Not the absence of fear, but acting despite it. Elena looked at him. I learned that from you. Watching you run this ranch, make hard decisions, face problems head on even when you are worried about the outcome. You do what needs doing even when it is hard. I just tried to do the same. James took her hand the first time he had done so since that night during the blizzard. When you first arrived, I saw a girl. Young, inexperienced, out of place. I was wrong, Elena, so completely wrong. You are one of the strongest people. Summer arrived in full force, bringing long days and warm nights. The ranch thrived under Elena and James's partnership. The cattle were healthy, the books balanced, and the ranch hands worked with renewed purpose. Elena had become an essential part of ranch operations, and even the neighboring ranchers who had initially mocked James now grudgingly admitted he had made a wise choice. For the first time since Margaret's death, James felt truly alive. He caught himself smiling for no reason. He looked forward to each day instead of just enduring it, and he realized somewhere between spring and summer that what he felt for Elena had grown beyond respect and partnership into something deeper. Love. Different from what he had felt for Margaret, but no less real. Elena felt it too. She had come to Montana looking for purpose and belonging, and she had found both. But more than that, she had found someone who saw her for who she truly was. Not too young, not too old, just Elena. Someone valued for her mind, her strength, and her character. They had not spoken of love, not directly. But it lived in small moments. The way James's hand would brush hers when they worked side by side. The way Elena's eyes lit up when he walked into a room. The comfortable silence they could share. The deep conversations that stretched late into the night. Both of them knew something important was building between them. They just needed time to let it grow naturally, without pressure or expectation. Then the letter arrived. It came on a Tuesday in late July. James brought the mail from town and handed Elena a thick envelope with her father's handwriting on it. She went pale the moment she saw it. What is wrong? James asked, alarmed by her reaction. It is my father's writing, Elena said. But this is too thick. He never writes more than 1 page. Something must be wrong. She opened it with shaking hands and read. James watched her face crumble as she absorbed the words. Tears streamed down her cheeks. "Elena, what happened?" he asked gently. "My father," she whispered. "His old injury from the mine has gotten worse. Much worse. He can barely walk now, cannot work at all. My sister Anna, she is 14. She has been trying to hold things together, but it is too much. The younger children are struggling. They need me." She looked up at James with devastated eyes. "He is asking me to come home." "Not demanding, just asking. He says he knows I have my own life now, but they are desperate. Anna is too young to handle everything alone. They need help." James felt like he had been punched in the stomach. Elena leaving. The ranch without her. His life without her. The thought was unbearable. "When does he need you?" he asked, his voice carefully neutral even as his heart raced. "As soon as possible," Elena said. Anna wrote a note at the bottom. "She is scared, James. She sounds just like I did when I was 16 and our mother died. She does not know what to do." Elena stood up abruptly and walked to the window, pressing her hand against the glass. "I have to go. I have to help them, but—" She stopped, unable to finish the sentence. But leaving meant giving up everything she had built here. The life she had created. The partnership with James. The beginning of something she had hardly dared to hope for. That night, James could not sleep. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about Elena packing her bags, getting on the train, disappearing from his life forever. The thought was physically painful. Around 3 in the morning, he got up and walked through the quiet house. He saw light under Elena's door and heard soft sounds of movement inside. She was packing. He almost knocked but stopped himself. This was her decision to make. He could not ask her to stay. It would not be fair. Her family needed her, and she had already sacrificed so much for others. How could he ask her to choose between her family and him? But as he turned to go back to his room, he heard a sound that broke his heart. Elena was crying. Not loud, dramatic sobs, but quiet, broken sounds of someone trying to muffle their grief. James knocked softly. The sound stopped immediately. "Elena?" he said. "Can I come in?" A long pause, then, "Yes." He opened the door to find her sitting on her bed, surrounded by her few possessions, tears streaming down her face. She wiped them away quickly, trying to compose herself. "I am sorry," she said. "I did not mean to wake you." "You did not," James said, sitting in the chair by her door. "I could not sleep either." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Elena spoke, her voice raw with emotion. "I do not want to go," she admitted. "I know I have to, but James, I do not want to leave. For the first time in my life, I have found a place where I belong, where I am valued for who I am, where I am building something that matters, and I have found—" She stopped, unable to say it out loud. "Found what?" James asked gently. Elena looked at him, and in her eyes he saw everything she was feeling. "I have found happiness," she whispered. "Real happiness. The kind I thought I would never have." James's heart cracked open. Since Margaret's death, he had built walls around his emotions, protecting himself from more pain. But Elena had slowly, gently broken through those walls without even trying, and now the thought of losing her was more painful than anything he had felt in years. "Elena," he said, moving to sit beside her on the bed, "I need to tell you something. I should have said it weeks ago, but I was scared. I have been scared since the day you arrived, scared of what I was starting to feel." He took her hands in his. "I love you. Not as a housekeeper or a business partner or even just a friend. I love you. Completely. The way a man loves a woman he wants to spend his life with. You have brought light back into my world when I thought I would live in darkness forever." Elena's tears flowed freely now. "I love you too," she said. "I think I have loved you since those letters. But being here with you, working beside you, learning who you really are, it has only grown stronger." "Then stay," James said, and his voice broke on the word. "Please, Elena, stay with me. Not out of obligation or because you have nowhere else to go. Stay because you want to be here, because you love me as much as I love you. But my family," Elena whispered. "How can I abandon them when they need me?" "You are not abandoning them," James said firmly. "Listen to me. I will send money. Enough to hire someone to help Anna with the house and children. Enough to pay for medical care for your father. Enough to make sure they are comfortable and cared for. You supported them for 3 years by yourself. Let me help you support them now." Elena looked at him with hope and disbelief mixed together. "You would do that? For my family?" "For our family," James corrected. If you stay and marry me, really marry me, they become my family too. That is what family means. We take care of each other. But that is a lot of money, Elena protested. I can afford it, James said. The ranch is doing well, better than it has in years, partly because of your ideas. And what good is money if I cannot use it to help the people I care about? Besides, this is not charity. Your father would not accept charity. This is family helping family. He paused, searching her face. But Elena, I need you to know something. This offer stands whether you stay or go. I will help your family regardless. If you need to go back to Pennsylvania, if that is what your heart tells you to do, I will pay for your ticket and send money to support them. This is not a bribe or manipulation. I'm giving you a real choice. Elena understood what he was offering. Complete freedom. The ability to choose without pressure, without guilt. He was not trying to force her hand. He was simply telling her the truth and letting her decide. If I go, she asked quietly, would you wait for me? James considered that. I would wait, he said, but I would not ask you to come back. If you go, you might realize you belong there. You might find that taking care of your family is your true calling. And if that is the case, I want you to be free to live that life without feeling guilty about me. That is not fair, Elena said with a small, sad smile. You are making this too easy. You are supposed to be selfish and demanding, not understanding and generous. I have learned something from you, James said. Real love is not about possession or control. It is about wanting what is best for the other person, even if that means letting them go. Elena looked at him for a long moment. This man who had been afraid to love again, who had built walls around his heart, was now offering her complete freedom to choose. He was risking the pain of loss rather than try to manipulate or pressure her into staying. That courage, that love, that respect for her autonomy, told Elena everything she needed to know. I choose you, she said firmly. I choose us. I choose this life we are building together. Your family, James started, will be taken care of, Elena said. With your help, our help, they will be better off than they would be if I went back. Anna is capable. She is young, but like I was, she is strong. With proper support, hired help, and financial security, she can manage. And I can visit them. I can write. I can be part of their lives without sacrificing my own. She squeezed his hands. James, I sacrificed my teenage years to raise my siblings after my mother died. I did it willingly out of love, and I do not regret it. But that chapter of my life is over. I am not 16 anymore. I am 19, almost 20, and I have earned the right to build my own life, to choose my own path, to love and be loved. Are you sure? James asked. Elena, I do not want you to have regrets later. The summer wedding was small but meaningful. They held it in late August when the wildflowers bloomed across the Montana hills and the evening air was perfect, warm but not hot. Elena wore a simple cream-colored dress that she and the wife of the general store owner had sewn together. It was not fancy, but it was beautiful in its simplicity, just like Elena herself. James wore his best suit, the same one he had worn to meet her at the train station all those months ago. But he looked different now, lighter somehow. The grief that had shadowed his eyes was gone, replaced by something bright and hopeful. All 12 ranch hands attended, dressed in their cleanest clothes and looking uncomfortable but happy. Chuck stood up as James's witness, his weathered face split in a genuine smile. The general store owner's wife stood with Elena, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief. The ceremony took place on a small rise overlooking the ranch, with the mountains in the distance and the setting sun painting everything gold. The local minister, a kind old man who had known James for years, performed the service. Marriage is not just about love, the minister said. It is about partnership, about choosing each other every day, about building something together that is stronger than either person alone. James and Elena have already proven they understand this. They have built a partnership based on respect, trust, and genuine caring for one another. Today they are just making official what has already been true for months. When it came time for the vows, James took Elena's hands and spoke from his heart. Elena, when you first stepped off that train, I saw only your age. I saw what I expected to see, not who you really were. But you were patient with me. You showed me through your actions, your wisdom, and your courage that depth of soul cannot be measured in years. You taught me to see beyond the surface, to value character over appearance, substance over expectations. You brought light back into my life when I thought I would live in darkness forever. I promise to spend every day being worthy of the gift you have given me. I promise to be your partner in all things, to value your opinions, to support your dreams, and to love you exactly as you are. Elena's voice trembled slightly as she spoke her vows, but her words were clear and strong. James, you gave me something precious. You gave me the freedom to choose. Not just once, but over and over. You never forced or manipulated or pressured. You let me show you who I was, and then you saw me. Really saw me. Not as too young or too inexperienced, but as a whole person with value and worth. You trusted me with responsibilities, listened to my ideas, and treated me as an equal partner. You taught me that I did not have to sacrifice my own happiness to care for others, that I could do both. I promised to be your partner in building this life. I promised to bring my whole self to this marriage, holding nothing back. And I promised to love you with everything I am, today and always. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, the ranch hands cheered. James kissed Elena softly, and in that moment both of them felt the rightness of it. This was where they were meant to be, who they were meant to be with. The celebration afterward was simple. They set up tables outside, and Elena had prepared a feast with help from the ranch hands who had gotten surprisingly good at following her cooking instructions. There was roasted beef, fresh bread, vegetables from the garden Elena had started, and pies made from wild berries. As the sun set and lanterns were lit, the men told stories and shared toasts. Chuck stood up, his face flushed from the whiskey he had been drinking. I will admit something, he said. When the boss first told us he had a mail-order bride coming and she was 19 years old, I thought he had lost his mind. I thought, here comes trouble. Some little girl who does not know hard work, who will cry and complain and make everyone miserable. He raised his glass toward Elena. I have never been more wrong in my life. Elena is tougher than half the men I have worked with. She faced down rustlers, saved Pete's life, and runs this household better than anyone I have seen. Age does not mean nothing when it comes to character. Elena has more character in her little finger than most people have in their whole bodies. Boss, you are a lucky man. And Elena, you got yourself a good one too. Here is to both of you. Hear, hear. The men chorused, raising their glasses. Tommy stood up next, grinning. I lost $5 betting Elena would not last 2 weeks. Best $5 I ever lost. She proved us all wrong, and I'm glad she did. This ranch is better with her in it. One by one, the men shared their thoughts, their respect clear in every word. Elena felt tears prick her eyes, but they were happy tears. These rough cowboys who had doubted her at first had become like brothers to her. Their acceptance meant more than they probably knew. As the evening wore on and the men gradually drifted off to bed, James and Elena found themselves alone under the stars. They sat close together on a bench James had built that summer, overlooking the land they would share. Are you happy? James asked softly. Happier than I ever thought I could be, Elena answered honestly. When I wrote that first letter to you, I was looking for security and purpose. I found so much more. I was looking for someone to fill the emptiness, James admitted, but you did not fill it. You created something entirely new, a different kind of happiness built on different foundations. Better foundations, maybe. Elena leaned her head on his shoulder. I used to worry that people would always see me as the child bride, the girl who was too young. But I do not care anymore. The people who matter, you and the men here, you see me for who I am. That is enough. More than enough, James agreed. Though I think the community is starting to come around too. Did you notice the ranchers who used to mock me are now asking me for business advice? Word has gotten out that our ranch is doing better than ever, and they are curious about why. Because we work together, Elena said simply. 2 minds are better than 1. 2 sets of eyes see things the other might miss. That is the secret. They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the night sounds of the ranch. Cattle lowing in the distance, the wind rustling through the grass, the creak of the barn door. I wrote to my father after the ceremony, Elena said. Told him all about today. I wish they could have been here. We will visit them next summer, James promised. Spend a few weeks, let them see how happy you are. And maybe when things are more settled for them, some of your siblings can come visit us for a summer. Elena's face lit up. Really? You would not mind? This is your home too, James said. Of course your family is welcome. I want to know them, want them to know me. Besides, the ranch could always use extra hands during summer. Your brothers are old enough to help out, learn some skills. You are too good to me, Elena whispered. I am exactly as good as you deserve, James corrected. Which is very, very good. They laughed together and it felt natural, easy. The awkwardness of those early months was gone completely. They were comfortable with each other now, able to joke and tease and share silence without any discomfort. As the night deepened, they went inside to the home they now officially shared. Everything had changed, yet everything felt right. The marriage papers were signed, the vows were spoken, but in truth, they had been building this partnership for months. Today just made it official. Over the next few weeks, the reality of their new life settled in. They were no longer just partners in running the ranch. They were husband and wife in every sense. They shared everything now, from morning coffee to evening conversations to the quiet intimacy of building a life together. The ranch hands noticed the change and approved. James smiled more. Elena had a glow about her that had not been there before. The whole atmosphere of the ranch felt lighter, happier. One evening in September, as they reviewed the books together, a habit they had maintained, James looked up from the ledger and studied Elena. "What?" she asked, noticing his stare. "I was just thinking," James said. 9 months ago, I placed that advertisement expecting some weathered widow looking for security. Instead, I got you. Someone who challenged every assumption I had, who forced me to grow and change, who made me see beyond my own limited perspective. I got more than I expected too," Elena said. "I thought I was trading one set of responsibilities for another. I did not expect to find partnership, respect, and love. We are proof," James said thoughtfully, "that the best things in life often come in unexpected packages. That what we think we want is not always what we need. That if we stay open to possibilities, life can surprise us in the most wonderful ways." Elena nodded. "We are also proof that people can change. You were so sure my age mattered. I was so sure I would never be seen as anything but too young. But we both learned to see differently. The community has learned too," James added. "Did you hear that Tom Peterson asked his wife's opinion on a business decision last week? First time in 30 years, according to her. He told me he saw how well our partnership works and thought maybe he should try it." Elena laughed. "So we are starting a revolution without even trying?" "Maybe," James said with a smile. "Or maybe we are just showing people what is possible when you treat each other as equals. When you value minds and hearts over age or gender or expectations." As autumn arrived, bringing cooler temperatures and changing colors, James and Elena settled into their life together with contentment.